Alright, so this is going to be a pretty in-depth tutorial on how to make models for Minetest entities with Blender. The version of Blender that I'm going to be using is Blender 2.93 because the LTS is a long-term support version because I found it works the best with the add-on that we're going to be using for exporting the models to with animations. Now, we're going to go ahead and look in the code here that I've already written. We have a mod in my mod folder called my-mod. And then in the models we have nothing at the moment, but there's a models folder. Then we have the init.lua file with this code, which just registers an entity called entity with a mesh that we have not created and a texture we have also not created yet. And so we just have it setting the animation to frame 0 to frame 40 with looping. Alright, so once I spawn that, it'll do that. So if I just run into Minetest right now, real quick, make a new world and enable that mod, just go ahead and go in and spawn it and see it is there. You can see my cursor goes over it, but up here it will say, up here it says it cannot find the model, the B3D model, and also there's no texture, so it doesn't really care about that. Alright, so I'm using Blender 2.93 LTS release, which over here there's a link in the description. This is the link that it will take you to. You just go ahead and hit download it. It should download it for your version, whether you're running Windows, Mac, or Linux. I am currently using a version of Linux, so that's what I have. And then once you figure out how to run it, go in here, and then actually want to go to Edit and Preferences, and then if you want to go to Add-ons, there's a button up here that'll be Install. Now, by default, we have all these options, but B3D is not one of them. So that is the only one currently that Minetest supports for animation. The link for that is right here. I also have that in the description. This is by one of the moderators. It is a GitHub link, and you can just go ahead and download the zip file. Instead of cloning it, just download the zip file, and then once you do, let me go ahead and download that. Once you have saved it, you can go ahead and go to your preferences, and then go up to install. Go ahead and click that and install add-on. And then once you do that, you can just search for it, so B3D, and there we have it right there. Just go ahead and click enable, and then you're good to go. We can start modeling. So up here we have a gimbal you can use to rotate. I use my middle mouse. If you're using a laptop and you don't have a middle mouse, you can go ahead and use this. But since I do have a mouse, I'm going to use that. Let's start by adding a cube. You can go up here and press this and go to cube, mesh, under mesh it'll be cube, but I like to use the hotkey Shift A. It shows when I press Shift over here, but it's kind of hard to see. So Shift A, let's go ahead and add a cube, and then go to the side view, and go into edit mode by hitting tab. So go ahead and hit tab, and we're in edit mode now, so we can go ahead and grab the vertices here and move them around. I'm using left click to select these. I'm going to select everything by pressing A. It's not Control A like you normally do, but A, and then G to grab. And then you hold Control down and it'll click. It'll click along this grid that you see. If you zoom out a little further, it'll click along the larger grid. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this all the way up here. You can also press Z. That's the upper axis. Just kind of go along the one axis. Alright, hold Control, do that. And now we have this resting along the top, which is what we want. Side note, it doesn't have to be on the top of that grid there. That's just kind of the bottom of your model typically, depending on how you put your collision box. Usually the collision box for the bottom face is going to be 0 at that resting at the bottom, but if you usually have it in negative numbers, so you can also have it below that. So it's based on how your collision box is set up. And I'm also using Shift and middle click to pan my view. If all these hotkeys and controls are too confusing for you, you can go ahead and use these tools on the side. So I'm just going to actually bring it up a little higher, since this is going to be the head of the object. And then we can press Shift A, or you can go over here to add, and add another cube. I'm going to bring that up again with Control to click it. And there's multiple ways I could scale this down. So I want it to be a leg. I want it to be like right here, right? So smaller than it is now, both ways. So I'm just going to go ahead and click one vertex and press Control L. Control L will select the rest of a connected object. So you see this is one whole cube. I just select the rest. So if I select both of these, press Control L, it's going to select both of those. I'm just going to go ahead and select that Control L, and then if I scale it down right now with S, it will scale it along every axis. But what we really want to do is just scale it along all the axes but Z. So if we go ahead and hit S and go Shift Z, it'll scale it along every axis except for up and down. So if we go ahead and do that in this mode, you can see it's scaling it like that, like how we want it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and press Shift Z and scale along that axis to about that. That's going to be our leg size. And then just bring it over here. And you'll notice that I am snapping along all these little cubes here, and that is for a reason, because that's where I'm going to be assigning pixels. So this will be 1 pixel, this will be another pixel, so it'll be 4 across, I believe. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. So 4 across and 4 wide, and then also however many this is tall. So now we've created our mesh. Okay, very simple mesh. Grab all this. Let's go into our UV editing mode, and it has this little tab over here. That's for, so if I select everything, you see something has appeared over here. These are where the faces are assigned for a texture. So say I wanted my texture to be 64 by 64. So I can just I can go ahead and open up GIMP. I use GIMP as my image editor for Minetest sort of things. You can use whatever you want, just as long as you can do the same things. So I have 64 by 64 pixels, and say I wanted to create a texture and then apply that texture to this guy. So first I have to map out where I want it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to notice here I actually have it incorrectly positioned, because the front of all objects is the y-axis. So over this way is forwards. What I want to do is just go ahead and rotate this guy. So I grab him. If I see rotate, he's not going to rotate correctly. Press R, Z, and then use the snapping again, and then that. And you can also, something I like to do is just type the numbers in. So I can just type 90, so it turns it 90 degrees, and his legs should be pointing in the correct direction. Okay, so now that we have this all set up like that, we can just go ahead and start doing some counting. By counting, I mean how many pixels we have here. 20. I could have counted that wrong, but it looks like there's 20 tall, and since we haven't scaled this box at all, it's just going to be 20 all round. And since these were the same block, they're also going to be 20 tall, and we already counted earlier. This is going to be 4 across and 4 wide. So we know, now we know all the dimensions for everything. Go into GIMP, and then now we can just go ahead and measure that as with this box select tool, 20 by 20. So this is one face. Now, I think that's personally too many pixels. So for my sort of style, so I'm actually going to divide it. Since everything was divisible by 2, all of our things, I'm just going to go down to 10. So 10 by 10 by 10. Just like that. So that's going to be one face. And we're up in the corner right now, which I actually don't like. So I'm just going to move this down here. It's ugly, I know, but I don't care, alright? And we have this. So how I'm doing this, Minetest usually, in the community, people usually make the UV mapping, or how we map the textures onto these, pretty similar. So we have the front face here, we have the left face here, and the back face here, and the right face on the side here. I think that's pretty standard, but I also, it could be wrong, it could be the other way around, but it's really up to taste because you're the one texturing this. It doesn't really matter as long as you get the textures right. So I'm just going to make sure that we know by using the fill tool, grabbing green. Green's going to be our left, and then our bottom. Okay, so now that we've set this up for the face, this is going to make sense in a second, I promise. So we're just going to go ahead and export this in our mod folder. Just go ahead and create a textures folder. We're in there now. We just put this in there. What do we name it? We named it my mod entity.png. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that and paste it in there. And now we have the texture. Okay. So now we go in here. You can go ahead and go to the shading tab over here. And then go ahead and hit new. And then you go over here down to base color. and then find image texture. There we go. Go ahead and hit open and find your texture. And so we have that, and you see it looks a little weird because it's obviously not mapped correctly, but you'll also notice that the edges are blurry. For visualization, we can just go ahead and change that from linear to closest, and then it'll automatically be pixelized. Now we can go over to UV editing, find the front face. Remember, this is facing the Y direction, so this is the front face. You should go in here, and what you can do is you can take this and line it up really carefully, and maybe just fit in there. Go into solid, go down here, and hit texture, and it'll show the texture. So we're just going to go ahead and see. We have this front face for the texture, but it's kind of off. It's a little bit off, and you can spend the time making it perfect, but what I like to do is just go in here to go to UV tab up here, go snap to pixels, and go corner. And if you just go ahead and grab that, it's going to snap it to the pixels. And if you just, even if it's off, you can circle it and just grab these vertices over the edge. So now you can see pixel snap on, it's snapping to the pixels that are on this screen. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the top face, and now I could keep doing it like this, but the only problem with that is that I don't know how these textures are aligned in here. I can go ahead and bring that down, but oh, look at that. If I bring it down towards the head, it should be connecting right here, not right here. So that tells me I should turn this, oh, other way, that 90 degrees, and now that's correctly aligned. Make sure we have it right here too, so if we bring this up, it should be up on the top, but it's not. So we want to make it turn. Okay, now it's up on the top, so these two should connect. So if you create like a scar mark or something across there, it will connect up, make sure everything's uniform. And you can just go ahead and do this with all the faces. Okay, so now we have all the textures face. So we have the front face, we have the back face, we have the left face, right face, and the bottom face. So now we have the top one currently correctly selected. So I could even go into this texture, make a modification, say, give him a little smiley face. That is a horrendous smiley face. Just go ahead and export it again with Control E. Go back to Blender. And if I just load it back in here by pressing that button, opening it, or you could go over to shading and reopen the texture by pressing the file button. It'll just refresh it, and you'll see we have a face on our little guy. Okay, cool. That works. Let's just go ahead and do these legs, but I noticed something. I have 2 legs. I would just have to do twice as much work, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete one of the legs, since I can just do it once and duplicate it across the same thing. So remember, we measured that this is 20 tall, 4 wide, so I can just go ahead and make something for this as well in the same general shape as this. And since most of our modeling is going to be like in blocks, this is kind of how I'm going to make it. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that out. So there we go. Let's re-export that. If we load it again, we'll see that it's changed. Bring that out. And now it should be, there we go, square. That is good. Let me just go ahead and grab this other one. Now that should be correct. Alright, so all that to do it, we have 1 leg, 1 face, and we should go ahead and go over here, duplicate that leg with Control. We can keep it there. So Control D, by the way. No, Shift D. Yeah, Shift D. And we're going to go ahead and give him an armature. Well, an armature is, oh, we could, I'm just going to go ahead and turn the textures on here so we can see it. Oh, that's the front. An armature, you'll see down here, is this. This will add bones to your scene. And there is keyframes down here. A keyframe is just a point in time where an object is in a certain position. So if I go ahead and add a keyframe for this guy, so I can press I, and then location, so that adds a location keyframe. I go to frame 10, and then move him over here, press I, and location again. It will give him a interpolation between those 2 places between that time. So if I press play, it will do that. But we do not animate the object directly. The reason for this is because Minetest does not translate that animation correctly, and so what Minetest does use is a armature. So what we need to do is take this armature, which looks strange, but these are called bones. They're used for animating objects. So what we go ahead and do, I'm going to go into this mode, press tab, and we have edit mode. Similar to this one, we press tab to go to edit mode. We can edit things. Over here, go into tab, we're in edit mode. We just got this. We grab it, you can move it however you want. This is the base of the bone, so that's how it's going to be rotating. Right now, in edit mode, it rotates like that, but when you're animating it, this is pose mode, you rotate it from the base. So that's what you want to be thinking about. I'm going to go ahead and go back into edit mode, bring this up, and this is the base of the bone right here, so I want it to be right there. I'm just going to real quick go down here, object data properties, viewport display, in front, so it'll show it in front no matter where you're from, so you can always select it and stuff. Yep, you press Control Tab, you can see it brings up a menu. So edit mode, pose mode, object mode. Object mode is normal, and if you press Tab, it'll go into edit mode. You press Control Tab, you can switch between object, edit, and pose mode. So we want to be in edit mode. Just press Tab normally. And so we have this over here. Go into pose mode, you can see it's going to rotate from the base of here, and if you grab it, it's going to go around here. So just imagine we have this head attached to this would go with it. Now, we want to create another bone, press Shift D, or you could press Shift A, we'll create another bone as well. And you just want to rotate it 180 degrees so it's facing downwards, and just click it into place. You see the base is right along the edge right there. And just grab the head here, and bring it all the way down. You don't have to. It doesn't really matter, but I like to have the bones this long. Just duplicate that and bring it over. Okay, so that's pretty cool. We have our bones, but they don't do anything at the moment. They're just standing there. Also, you can change the version of this. View of bones, I like stick. Just shows the bones a little nicer. It doesn't show where the back is, but it's just a little nicer to look at. So, I have these bones, but they don't have right names. Right now this is just bone, this is bone.001, this is bone.002. So I'm just going to change this real quick to body, and then leg.l. Now why would I do leg.l? It's preference a little bit, but also it means if I have a complicated armature, something that has a lot of arm bones and a lot of leg bones, I don't want to copy them over and change all their names. What I can go ahead and do is just put a .l. It doesn't matter if it's capital or not. You can also do .left or .right, and it will translate it. You can go ahead and select this bone, all the bones that are on one side, press F3, and type SY, and it comes up with symmetrize. Okay, if you press symmetrize, it'll duplicate it, mirror it, and rename it. So it's leg.r on this side. So leg.l, leg.r. It's important to have these have names, because the next step is assigning these pieces of mesh to the bones to know what to move. I'm going to go ahead and select this, and then select this as well, this bone, with shift. So now that we have that, you can see that the one that's a little bit lighter yellow is our bone. That's good. We want that to be the case. We want the armature to be the one we selected second. So when we hit Control P, we're trying to parent it to the bones. So you press Control P, and then you want to scroll down to empty groups. Now what that's going to do is when you go over here down to object data properties, after we selected our bone, now you can see this is parented to it. Go down to object data properties for our object, which I'm going to go ahead and rename that to guy. This is bones. So we go into guy, and we see now we have these different properties. So we can just go ahead and go into this guy, select him. Remember, if you press Control L, it will select the rest of what you've selected, or you can just hit L while you're hovering over it. It's up to you. And then I'm going to go ahead and select body, so it looks like bodies are selected. Go ahead and hit assign, and then click out of it. Make sure you have this one, select this one, go down, use the arrow keys. For some reason Blender 2.93 doesn't like you selecting with a mouse, so we just use the arrow keys. Go down to leg.l, because that's what the left leg. Go ahead and hit assign, and go down, hit this, select assign. Okay, so now it doesn't look like anything's happened, but if we go in here We go to pose mode, so control tab from object mode. If you move this, you see it moves our leg on the left and on the right, and our body as well. But you'll notice, if I want him to do like a bouncing movement, it kind of goes away with his legs. His legs don't do anything. And I kind of only want our legs to be rotating. So what I can do is I can go to edit mode here, select these two, and then select this one last. And always remember this for Blender: if you select something last and try to parent it or connect it to it, the thing that's selected last will be the target. So I press Control P, press keep offset, so these are now two connected. You can see the lines that it drew from these two, from here to here. And now if I go into pose mode again, grab this, it's going to keep those with it, and you can rotate them and move it around. Alright, let's do some really quick animating. And if you remember back in the code here, I set the animation to 0 to 40, so we're just going to make a little animation from 0 to 40. So we can just go ahead and hit everything and hit rotation, location, and scale. But what's easier is to just hit this button, auto keying. So whenever you move something, so if I grab it and just press right there so it stays where it is, that's going to create a keyframe for its location, rotation, and scale, no matter what I do to it. So if I go ahead and grab everything, grab it to make sure it's in place, or I can just hit this, rotation, scale, and then I can go over here to frame 20, say, and then make this leg go out here. I like to make it exact, just 45 degrees that way. You can tell up to the top left, you can see how much of a degree you're moving it, so 45 degrees that way, and you'll see it automatically makes keyframes from 0 to 20. And then if I go from 0 to 40 again, and then I go ahead and select everything, grab this keyframe, so select it, and duplicate it with Shift D, and bring it all the way over here, it's going to repeat that first frame and go back to it. And so when you play it, it's a repeating motion. But you'll notice this is not how people walk. This is an interesting walk. I'm just going to go ahead and real quick do some fancy stuff and grab this, bring it back to frame 10, frame 20, just duplicate this across. That should be right there. Yes. Like that. Yeah. So you'll notice it is a little quicker, but it's also still doing the same thing. So what I want to do is I'm over here. Go ahead and go to this mode, do 45 degrees this way, and select the other one from behind, and 45 degrees or 90 degrees that way. And you can see when we do the animation, look at that, some walking. It's pretty janky, but it's an example. Alright, so now we have finished our model. This is everything. Say this is all I wanted to do. It's finished. But make sure when you're exporting this model, you're not in edit mode, and you're not also not in pose mode here or edit mode here. Just things that will make it fail to export. So if I'm going to go ahead and hit export Bliss 3D, you can go ahead and see it has it limited to selected objects. You can take that off. I like taking it off. I'm just going to go ahead and press export. Now if we hop over to Minetest, go in, we'll be able to spawn in another one of those objects, and we'll see, would you look at that, we have a model and it's going along its animation. How cool is that? But it's pretty small. You can change the size in Blender if you like, or you could go ahead and change it in the code. You go over to the code, you can add oh my goodness, visual size, and it's a vector 2, so x equals, oh, it's actually a vector 3 if you want, so you can go ahead and go vector new. Default is 1 on all axes. You can go ahead and do 2. That'll double the size effectively. You go ahead and go in here, and there, it's bigger now. But yeah, that is how you make a model for Minetest. There's a lot of other complex things that could be delved in, but yeah, that's kind of the basics if you want to get started with making an animated model, get into Blender as an entity. And obviously you can have it controlled in other ways. There's other mob APIs that allow you to make a mob that actually works, but you can go ahead and make models for that and make the animations, and you can just set the animations in the descriptions. Like one that does that pretty easily is mobs redo, I believe. It makes it pretty simple to make models for mobs and make new mobs with that. So you don't have to code everything from scratch. But yeah, that's everything. I hope you have a great day.